Welcome to the Cut Pro Wrestling Podcast. I'm your host, Randy Zelia from BackSportsPage.com. Thank you for taking a little time of your week to spend with us to talk professional wrestling with some of the great talent that's either been in the ring, currently in the ring, or been around the ring. So thank you for making us a part of your week. So this week on the show, we decided to go back in time to my old show, Off Topic, which is going to be in development to coming back on backsportspage.com. We're going back to an interview I conducted last year with Justin Credible. That's right. Former ECW champion, former WWE superstar. Justin Credible and I sat down for about 47 minutes to discuss his career and all things about both his opinion about the professional wrestling world and his career. We really just broke it down. And we will be back next week with a new guest, with a brand new interview, but we're taking a trip down memory lane. And guess what? That's just incredible. That's right. I just went there. I went that route. So right now, enjoy the interview with Justin Credible. All right, welcome to another edition of Off Topic. My name is Randy Zelia, courtesy of BackSportsPage.com. Finally, my guest, the one and only Justin Credible, former ECW World Champion, WWE star. Justin, thanks for giving me a few minutes today. I really appreciate it.
No, thank you for having me, man. It's been a pleasure.
So, we were just talking off air a little bit about the craziness of the pandemic. Before we jump into anything wrestling, how are you doing physically? How are you doing with the craziness? Is you and the family healthy?
We are healthy. We're very blessed in that aspect. We're hanging in there. We're hanging in there and, just trying to keep it together right now,
Oh, definitely. It was funny when I was researching for the interview a little bit here. You know what I didn't realize? I forgot that you got a win over Erwin R. Shyster as PJ Walker on Raw back in the day. Yeah. So can you talk to me about a little bit about your wrestling training? I knew Lance Storm was one of your trainers who eventually became one of your tag team partners. Talk to me about how you got started. What age did you find the love of wrestling? Talk to me about that.
Oh, God, I started really to love pro wrestling at probably about the age of 14, and pretty much sophomore, junior in high school, I knew I wanted to go on to become a pro wrestler. So I graduated at 17. I took 1 year off to work and save up some money. And I went to Calgary, Alberta, Canada in 1992, summer of 1992. I had my first match in October of 92 up in Calgary. So about 19 years old is when I had my first match.
Wow, 19 years old. What was it like going over to the legendary Hart Dungeon with Keith and knowing you're going down there? It's like, it was overwhelming a little bit.
It was exciting. I was so, now looking back, I was so naive and so young, and just, in my mind, I never thought twice. I was too stupid to be intimidated. I went out there just to learn, and I had a good attitude. And it was a lot harder than I thought, man. And but nonetheless, 12 guys and gals started, only 2 finished, and I was one of the 2 at the end of the camp. Yeah. So and I'm glad I did it, because that really was the beginning of, just started opening doors, because anytime you say you come from Calgary and you're trained by the Harts, there's a certain kind of seriousness that promoters and people take from you. So that really helped.
You say it was a certain type of seriousness. Was there? Is it like serious? Like, okay, like he's a real deal if he finished the camp, or is it an expectation level saying, okay, he finished here, so he's got to be able to be at this level?
Oh yeah, a little bit of both. Just the fact that not too many people come out of there anymore. The people that do come out of there, most all of them end up, either with the WWE or going somewhere else. I mean, past people have been, I think Natty trained up there, TJ Wilson, Lance Storm, Chris Jericho, just to name a couple. But, it's you really have, when I went to WWE, I said I was Pat Patterson asked me who trained me. The minute I said the Harts, he looked over to Vince and said, "Hey, this kid was trained by the Harts." So right away, it opens up a dialogue, a conversation. So, I think it's a little bit of both. I think the agents and the promoters know that if you finished up there, you got what it takes.
Can you talk about what it was like after you got done with your training and getting into the business, getting your first couple reps of matches and being on the indie scene at that point? What was that like for you?
Well, I went back, came home after the camp, which was in August of '92. Then they were opening up a promotion in Calgary again. So I went up there in October till around Christmas time, which I was setting up rings, wrestling for free, doing all that good stuff. So I had my first 10 matches out there. And then basically I came home back to Connecticut, where I was born and raised, and just started to poke around doing little indies here or there, but I really didn't have many connections. So one time I just took a chance and went to a house show in Connecticut at the old New Haven Coliseum, which isn't there anymore. And, I was always taught to bring your bag just in case somebody doesn't show up in those days. That happened sometimes. And I did. And I met Tony Garea, and he was kind enough to let me watch the show from backstage. And he asked me who trained me. And I said, again, it opened the door right away. I said, I was trained by the Harts in Calgary. And he goes, really? I said, yeah. And he goes, well, if you're interested, we're doing a new show called Monday Night Raw from Manhattan. And we need local guys. And, you're right here. It'll cut us, to cut down on some transportation and such. So that's how I see that started there, just doing extra work.
Can you, for those who don't understand what the extras were doing at that point, can you just give a little bit of detail on what it was like to be an extra at that time?
Yeah, we were just, our job was just to make the superstars look good. We were enhancement talent, and what enhancement talent means is literally that. We're there to just enhance their performance and to make them look as good as possible, to get their moves over, to get their character over. So that's essentially what we did. We were paid $150 plus transportation, which in those days it isn't bad. Hell, in these days it isn't so bad with what they pay some of these indie kids these days. But it was just a great learning experience because, man, you're 19, 20 years old and you're in the ring with some of the best in the world on one of the biggest stages in the world. Even though you're an extra, you're still getting experience and meeting people and making connections. And it was really essential. I think if I wasn't at the right place at the right time, that moment, I don't know where my career, if I would have had the success that I've had to this day,
And then you had, like we were discussing right at the top of the show, the big win over IRS.
Right.
What was that like for you in that? Was this at the Manhattan Center or was this at the?
It was at the Manhattan Center.
Okay.
It was at the Manhattan Center. And again, it was just, there was no real plans for me to do that. That was to further the feud with Razor Ramon, with Mike Rotundo, IRS. And, again, they just trusted me to do a good job. It was on live television. So they needed someone they could rely on, and they put me in there, and, it was easy. It was easy, but it really helped me gain notoriety. And then from there, they started putting me in some house show matches, some local, small high schools, because they still did high schools back in the day, some house show matches, which was great again. And, they're starting to use me more and more now. So it was really, really cool.
I have to ask this question. It's probably a question I probably should have started with towards the beginning of the show. Who did you look up to? Who was your favorite wrestlers growing up? Who was that guy that said, I want to do that?
I would say Ric Flair. I would definitely say Ric Flair. And then later on, like Shawn Michaels, and even Hulk Hogan to a degree. I loved Hulk, especially as a younger kid. He was just, so cool to me. So I'd say those guys, and then maybe like Ricky Steamboat and Terry Funk a little later on. But those guys would say those are my top 5 that made me really want to get in.
It was funny, too, because I was talking with I do the wrestling podcast that we're going to do later on tonight, the AEW review show. And when I told him that, you're going to be coming on and we're going to be talking with you, the first thing he said was about the Aldo Montoya gimmick. And
right.
What it's still one of those things that people still talk about when your name comes up. What was that like for you? Was it the we're going to try and make the best out of this situation and maybe it can turn into something more? Or what was your initial reaction to the Aldo Montoya gimmick?
Well, really it was the Aldo Montoya gimmick was initially a soccer player.
Okay.
Vince had pitched it to me, and the reason I got the Aldo thing was they were already looking for a Portuguese character. I'm 100% Portuguese and speak it because business was down in America. So they were just looking to kind of go overseas, go to Brazil, go to Europe, and I could
Oh,
speak
wow.
the language and so forth. Yeah. So and this was around time of the World Cup, so they wanted a soccer player, but then that didn't get over really. Well, they never tried it; it never came to fruition. They went with this, when they had the designs made up, it looked like a Power Ranger style, looking superhero type guy, and I was like, okay, great, whatever. And when they gave me the outfit like 2 hours before television with no dry run, no rehearsals like there are today, I had to put this thing on and was like, oh my God, this looks nothing like the design. I've never wrestled on television as far as trying to get myself over. So, and you literally have a couple of hours I've never worn a mask before either. So it was very uncomfortable, and it was just, really all thrown together. But I figured, you know what? I knew this was not gonna be a gig that would take me, very far. But what it did do was provided me a good 2.5, 3 years of touring the world, wrestling some amazing wrestlers, and gaining invaluable experience, which in essence prepared me for my later run in ECW and then back in the WWE in 2001 and so forth.
Can you talk about, because I heard a story, you can help confirm this or not. You were like the unofficial member of the Clique. You were good friends with Kevin Nash, Scott Hall, Sean Waltman, Shawn Michaels, and Hunter.
Yeah.
Can you talk about what it was like being around those guys? They had a little bit of a bad reputation, but it's a legendary reputation. Can you sort of set the record straight on how they were out of the ring in the public?
They were as advertised. I mean, I liked, I always, I was really the strongest relationship I had was with Scott Hall. Scott always liked to ride with the young boys meaning, young guys. So, it kind of kept him hip. He liked, what kind of music you were listening to. You could just kind of always tried to stay connected to the younger kids. To try to be cool or whatever. So, I got to drive with Scott a lot. And then through that, I got to, get into a lot of the cars with Kev and Sean. And, they were as advertised. They were sometimes very mean to a lot of the boys. But at the same time, how could you not want to get the knowledge and learn from, being in a car ride for 3-4 hours with these guys talking shop? It was an experience that really helped me understand the business, and I learned things in those car rides that I would have never learned. So it was interesting. I got a little bit of heat for it, but then again, nobody's going to say anything to me because I'm hanging out with them anyway. So it is what it is,
Well, and it's funny you said that too, because you said that Scott Hall was one of those guys that he was always listening to what the younger people were doing so he can stay at the curb. Correct me if I'm wrong. It was with your help that he made a shot at ECW.
Yeah.
Back in the day, after his WCW run was over. So obviously you guys are close. Can you talk about some of the things that Scott Hall taught you that you still use today that maybe you pass on to some of the younger talent?
Just sometimes less is more. He taught me how to be explosive, because one thing a lot of young guys do that is and it's hard to, because I was told you move too fast, you're all over the place, is you get nervous when there's dead time in the ring. It feels like forever, and I think we see that a lot in AEW, where kids are just moving from one move to the next, because when you're on television it could feel very uncomfortable. And he just taught me to kind of slow down, be explosive. Like if I'm going to shoot someone off the ropes, be explosive then, but then kind of lay off and take your time, let them sell, you do your thing. Just little lessons like that. Still things I use to this day, and also just to be, not be afraid to lay it in there. Be safe, but lay it in there. Excuse me.
What was it like for you towards the end of your initial WWE run going into ECW? That 1997 time frame was a very weird time in the business that WWE was sort of holding on by a thread. When the decision was made for you to go down to ECW, how difficult was it for you at the time to make that decision, and what was the transition like? We froze here for a second. All right, looks like we lost Justin. We'll be right back with him. I think he'll sign back in a second. So far, this is you're listening to the interview with Justin Credible, former WCW and ECW star. We got cut off a little bit here. So thank you guys for tuning in. We'll be back in 1 second. So far, so good. We were talking with him about his career in WWE. The show is brought to you by our good friends over at Level 1 Games in Pompton Plains, New Jersey. Go on down there if you're a video game fan. You like video games. Level 1 Games in Pompton Plains, New Jersey is the place to go. Go to level1games.com now for all your video games needs. And we're back with Justin. So I guess I lost you right when I finished the question about the transition from WWE to ECW. How difficult was that for you, and what were some of the both positives and negatives from that?
It wasn't really many negatives, and it was an easy transition. I never thought it would be as easy as it was. The ECW locker room was very laid back, and the money was pretty decent right off the bat. And the first time I wrestled was in Queens, New York, against my friend Chris Candido. And I wrestled as Aldo Montoya, which I ended up throwing the mask out into the audience and donned an ECW T-shirt, which a lot of people have. That match, it hasn't really seen the light of day, but it is somewhere available, I'm sure. And then the next night, I debuted at the ECW Arena against Jerry Lynn, who was also debuting at the ECW Arena. So that was my first match in Philadelphia, and the first time we wrestled together. My first time I went over, and the first time I used Justin Credible in ECW.
So for wrestling fans who don't know or who too new for the scene, explain what a typical ECW crowd was like.
It was something else. I mean, they were very passionate, and if they loved you, they would love you. I mean, they were, even if you messed up, they would have your back. But if they didn't like you for some reason, or if they saw you weren't authentic in some way, or a bit of a poser, or they would just eat you alive, and they were just waiting for you to mess up. But it was a room of 2,500 people, packed like sardines, and just so passionate about wrestling. Really, ECW fans were almost like a wrestler, like they were part of the show. That's the best thing I could say, because a lot of times they made mediocre wrestling great because of their participation. You know what I mean? It really did.
What was it like working with Paul Heyman? There's a lot of things that are always said about Paul, a lot of the negatives highlighting with the financial side. Can you talk about how he worked with you? Just to give you a heads up, I'll never ask you to take a shot at anyone or bury anybody in that sense. I always want to see how it affects you. But how was Paul working with you? What was that like? What was your initial take on him when you first met him and his idea for you?
I loved working with Paul. To this day, I don't have any problems with Paul. I never really got any. A lot of people all claim they got screwed over for money. I really didn't get screwed over for money. I think at the end of the day, he ended up owing me for one check towards the very end. But I ended up making more money for Paul than I did for WWE, believe it or not. But no, working with Paul, one thing he was a great creative mind, but he was more of a great motivator, because the people that he had under his wing there that he was pushing and promoting, those were all people that have kind of been told no. People with a lot of talent, but people that sometimes got beat up by the machine. Guys like the Chris Candidos, the Shane Douglas, myself, guys that said they weren't going to, you're not going to make it in the big leagues. And he was a great motivator. He'd take you into a corner and make you believe you belong there, that this was your shot, that you could do it. And through giving you that confidence and that opportunity, then you really do start to believe. And then he starts booking you in good storylines and in good angles and good matches. And then you really start to gain momentum. So I would say the one thing Paul Heyman has, more than even being creative, is being a great motivator and just a great communicator. He's very good at what he does, dude. Because he would get you so jazzed up before you went out there that you'd want to run through a wall for him. And obviously a lot of guys did, so he was very good at that, at getting the most out of each performer.
You mentioned his name before, and we'll get back to Paul in a second. But Chris Candido is a guy who has such a fond place in everybody's heart. What was it like working with Chris? I know he, like you said before, he had a little bit of a tough time in WWE from many different aspects. But when he went back to, it seemed like ECW was a great home for him, where he was able to be a wrestler. Can you talk about your experiences and how much love you have for Chris Candido?
Oh, Chris was great. I mean, Chris was one of the nicest people you'll ever want to meet. And he was so talented, truly loved the business with all his heart. And, he truly did belong in ECW. I think he ended up going, if I'm not mistaken, if memory serves me right, he ended up leaving for WCW for a little bit. And I don't think he ever came back to ECW, which I thought was a mistake. But I think that Paul and Chris got into some. I think Paul owed Chris a lot of money for airplane tickets that Chris was putting on his credit card and yada, yada, yada. But Chris ended up leaving. And it's a shame because I really never ended up seeing him again after ECW. But what a great performer and what a great guy,
Now, can you talk to me about that boom period, like around that 1998, 1999 time for ECW? You worked with Samban, you got walking around with the cane. They were really pushing the Impact players. Can you talk about what that time was like for you on a personal level, teaming with one of your mentors who trained you, and what just that being, I guess, the main push of your ECW time?
Yeah, it was great. I mean, it was a lot of fun. It was effortless. I mean, and the Impact players worked on so many levels because we were very familiar with one another. We were friends. We traveled together, and we weren't a team that looked alike. Like, I was more of the in-your-face, loudmouth, boisterous guy with the kendo stick, where Lance was more of the technical wrestler. So it's like what he lacked, I provided, and what I lacked, you know what I mean? It's like we were almost like two opposites that gelled well together. So it was a great time, and we had some really, really great matches. And I actually ended up, when I did get the world title, right before he left for WCW, I ended up having my last match with him. I forgot which one it was. I think it was Hardcore Heaven or something like that. Where he wrestled his goodbye match before he went to WCW. So we got to do it one last time.
Can you talk about what it was like for you around that time when Mike Awesome left to go to WCW? Tommy, Taz is there for a quick shot. Tommy takes the belt, and then you come out for Tommy. Was it sort of like vindication for you that you're like, oh my God, like I'm showing everybody what I can do right now by winning a world championship?
Yeah, I mean, it blew my mind because I only found out this was happening like 2 hours in like an hour into the show, 2 hours into the show. It was something that was really held very close and quiet to, Paul wasn't telling anybody. So I found out like midway during the show that this was happening. So it was a great feeling. I couldn't believe it. And, even though you don't really win the world title, it's more of a thing where you say, look, this is the main event on the pay-per-views, is usually the world title position. And Paul Heyman trusts me to put the company on my back to close the shows. So it was a really rewarding thing.
Was there any nerves with that came along with it? It was exciting, but there's also nerves,
No, not really, man. That was what the beauty was. We had fallen into such a comfortable rhythm. We knew what we had to do. We trusted one another completely in the ring and outside the ring. So we were just in a really good place, and it was, like I said, it was almost effortless to perform there because, everybody was super cool. We worked really hard, but, you just knew at the end of the day, everything was going to work out, in the ring.
If I had to ask you your top three opponents in ECW, who would you say?
Jerry Lynn, Tommy Dreamer, and probably Sabu. Oh, no, I'd say Shane Douglas.
Were you a little surprised that Tommy is still out there on TNA? I'm not, we're not, trying to take a shot at him, but like Tommy's up there in age, but he's still making a huge impact with Impact.
Yeah. No, it doesn't surprise me. Tommy will do it. He'll do it till the day he can't, Yeah. I think he's a little older than me. He's got to be 48, 49.
Yeah.
So he's still at it.
I think he might be one of the only guys who will ever appear on WWE, TNA, and AEW. I think like right now he holds that distinction, which is a little crazy. Oh no, Billy Gunn too.
Crazy.
Billy Gunn too.
That's right.
Billy Gunn.
That's right.
Yeah. So, and oh no, Cody. I forgot about Cody.
Was he in TNA?
Yeah, he had like a little brief time there right when he left WWE. He feuded with Moose, and then he got out of there. So
right on. Very good.
So, yeah, see, I got a little bit my old age. My old age, I'm getting there. So, so talk to me a little bit about the ending of ECW and how it affected you. When did you find out that it was over? Because I remember you guys had the Living Dangerously pay-per-view in March 01, or is it? And I still to this day was a little baffled with you guys still having sellout crowds. You guys are still making good money with merchandise. From a wrestler perspective, what was the view about what was going on at that time?
Well, like you said, we had two sold out shows at the Hammerstein, one in December, and I believe the last one was in January. And it was sold out, still selling, a lot of merchandise, a lot of, tickets. I think what had happened was bad business had just caught up to Paul. I think for a long time, Paul was paying people more money than he was making. Not that ECW wasn't making money. He was paying out more than he could afford because he was trying to keep guys from jumping to WCW, from jumping to WWE. I mean, he was paying me, like I said, he was paying me almost $4,000 per week to wrestle in ECW, which is a lot of money. I wasn't making that with WWE. So his top guys were making top money. And I think it just all caught up to him. And he wasn't getting paid by the pay-per-view companies quick enough in the times, because back then it was still an antiquated system. You'd have to wait like 90 days to get your pay-per-view pay. And just things weren't balancing out. And they just finally, that was it. Couldn't get a TV deal, and that really hurt, So
did it bother you from a personal standpoint to see Paul show up on Raw without really saying anything to anybody?
No, it didn't bother me because I knew that was going to happen. You always knew, And then shortly after that, I showed up on Raw too. So it's just he wasn't going to tell anybody. He always kept everybody kind of That was the one thing I didn't like about Paul was he would lie straight to your face and not to think twice about it. And I think he's one of those guys that'll avoid you and try to hold off telling you just so he doesn't have to deal with, maybe that disappointment or whatever, or just that conversation. But, I know a lot of people haven't talked to Paul since the day ECW closed, and he's, they're probably still waiting for a call. Who knows?
Well, funny little story for you here. The day that you re-debuted in WWE as Justin Credible, when you came in and helped X-Pac at the Continental Arena, I was in the crowd. I was watching, and I'm like,
"Oh wow!"
And so that's a little fun little tidbit here. But the funny part was there was all these rumors that you were coming aboard, and then it's amazing on how the rumors fell online. They dropped that you were probably in the building. What was it like coming back to the company, being with a fellow clickmate at that point in time, Sean Waltman, and with the X Factor thing? When I spoke to Sean Waltman about it, he told me that he did not like the gimmick whatsoever. He was not really a big fan of it. What was your take of working with Sean, but also being involved in the X Factor stable?
I liked working with Sean, but the gimmick, there really was no gimmick. Yeah. You know what I mean? I didn't really, I don't think Albert fit at all. I think it was just a weird, he's a weird, you know what I mean? It just didn't feel right with him. I think it could have been, I know what they were headed for. The intention was to put us with a bigger guy to kind of do our dirty work for us. And it just didn't work. It just didn't work. And I think a lot of it was the way Albert looked and his presence in the ring, because Albert had a bunch of opportunities, and he's a great guy, great in the ring. I love him to death, but I just don't think that his look really matched with what we were trying to do,
And then when they had the ECW, WCW revival versus WWE, did you ever have that forum to say, hey, look, Lance is here, I'm here, can we put this thing back together and give us a shot at the tag team?
It was mentioned, but unfortunately, man, it's they don't seem to see what's in front of them, and I don't know if that's done on purpose by whatever, but we wrestled once on Raw in Chicago against Edge and Christian live on Raw, and we had a hell of a match against them, but we weren't called the Impact Players. We did the pose though, and but nonetheless, I just don't think that Vince doesn't know about that. You know what I mean? And I'm sure a lot of the guys writing TV don't really know about that. And I think that really goes to show if they gave wrestling fans what they would like to see, I think they wouldn't be in the position they are in today, where ratings are down to an all-time low. And the more I see AEW, really, even though sometimes I don't always agree with their direction, or I nitpick at their show sometimes. They have an idea of giving kind of fans what they want to see, and I think it's serving them well.
I think for me, what you were saying about, especially at that time frame, if I was, what's the armchair quarterback, secondhand,
sure.
booking, if you go back and watch it, I would never have combined the WCW and ECW.
No, me neither.
And I would have put ECW later on in it. And if I were Vince, if I had that much money, I would have made those other WCW guys who sat home an offer they couldn't refuse, and build the whole thing to Mania, and had Mania WWE versus WCW. Yeah. That would have been secondhand book. And that DDP, it says, history is always written by the winners.
Yeah,
but it would have been made more sense to just slow burn that all the way out. What was it like for you after that time frame? There was a little bit of time where you were not with WWE and you came back at ECW One Night Stand. Talk about, first off, what that time frame was like in between, and then what was it like being back for ECW One Night Stand?
I went to Japan. I went to Wrestle for All Japan a little bit, a couple tours over there. Did some indie work. I did some TNA, and I just got the call to do One Night Stand, and from Tommy Dreamer, and it was great. It felt like an authentic ECW show. I mean, the crowd was there. It was hot. All the guys and gals were there. It was a really, really good show. It was a fun show, and it was so good that Vince couldn't help himself by bringing it back. That was the start of what would be the ECW relaunch. But you could already tell when they did the second One Night Stand that there was already too many WWE guys headlining the show. You know what I mean? Like the Rey Mysterios, and Rey Mysterio was there for like two matches in ECW, like Malenko, Guerrero, Benoit. It's like these weren't real ECW guys. So Vince was already trying to throw his you know what I mean? Like make it an authentic, you could just see right away.
Well, and I spoke to a couple people, and they all said that the original ECW One Night Stand felt like closure for a lot of the ECW guys. It felt like it felt like the right way to say goodbye, and like you guys opened the show with Lance and Chris opening the show, and then you guys had like a little reunion. Was that like? Did you guys feel like you were in a time machine? It's like, oh wow, we're all back together, and you and Dawn and.
Yeah, I mean, it really didn't feel like much time had passed, It really didn't feel like much time had passed. It felt like it was, if it was ever going to be a time, it would have been then. So, yeah, it was really cool. And the fans, what I loved is the fans. The fans were so happy, and we were so happy. The boys were so happy. Everyone just, and that actually, I haven't heard that in a while. But you're absolutely right. I think that was closure for a lot of the guys and gals,
Were you at the Hardcore Homecoming show a couple nights before?
No, I was not.
Okay. I had heard that was a very nice show, but because it wasn't the ECW name, they ran into so many different issues and so many different problems that it was like, it's a shame too, because it would have been nice to see some of the original guys like Raven and Shane and all those guys at the WWE one. But obviously, Vince holds his grudges. But the relaunch of ECW in 06. I know I'm taking a year off here, but the relaunch of ECW, you were originally there. Did it just was there not enough red flags to just show it? Like you just said before, a lot of WWE guys were like, you had Randy Orton, Kurt Angle the following year. There's no reason to have those guys there. Big shows in ECW. Yeah. Was there any red flags that maybe some people said this is just not a good idea? Maybe we shouldn't do this.
No, nobody said. Everybody was thinking it, but nobody was saying it because we were all getting, we needed an income, we were getting paid. And that's, in this business, it's such a fickle thing because, it's not like there's a million jobs for professional wrestlers out there. And this was at a time where Vince was really the only game in town. It was that unique time where nobody else was really, giving people opportunities like AEW or even how Impact is today. So it was just a weird time, and we needed the money, we needed to work. And but yeah, I saw it. I saw it right away. I mean, I had some hopes when I worked with CM Punk. I was his first match with the company. So that was cool. But other than that, every other match I had on TV was just horrible. I think I went over on Balls Mahoney once, and the rest I just, I was putting Sabu over, I put Kurt Angle over, and it's like, what is this? You know what I mean? I went from being a world champion to being a glorified job guy again, and I just didn't want to tarnish the name, so I pretty much left the company shortly after it started to go to that, really WWE heavy based, talent in ECW.
One thing I forgot to ask you about, just because from your reaction, what was it like hearing Enter Sandman again at the original One Night Stand and seeing the crowd just be bananas with that? What was that like?
It's unique. It's still unique when you see it today, man. And I've done some shows with Sandman recently, and before the pandemic, anyways. And it was great to see that live energy. And for Vince, that's the thing is I can't understand. Money is money to Vince, and if you have 3,500 people singing that song, and you can't realize that song provides value for you, like, wouldn't you just pay the royalties to use that song on TV when Sandman was on TV to do that entrance? You know what I mean?
Like, well, can I counter that though? Can I?
Yeah.
If you have something that organically starts like he had with the Yes Movement and a whole Philadelphia crowd chanting Rusev Day before he's even out there during matches that not even including Rusev, wouldn't you want to capitalize on that? And instead, he would kill that, like Zack Ryder. Zack Ryder gets over by himself on the Long Island YouTube show, and they bury him, and they don't want to give him an opportunity. So wouldn't you want to take advantage? I never understood it.
I still don't either, but that's the thing is, I don't know why they do that, because traditionally wrestling has always been about listening to what the people want. And I think everybody in WWE is so, I don't know if it's Vince, I don't know who it is, but they have these hard-ons for people. They have these fetishes for whatever. Like, they feel like they could play God instead of going out there and organically listening to what's going on with the people. That's what always worked, man. And I think Vince has lost touch with that. And I think with them becoming as successful as they've been for, I don't know how many years, 20, 30 years, whatever, that he's lost touch with how to get people over. Even CM Punk, they had no choice but to push CM Punk. You know what I mean? And Daniel Bryan, the same thing. And they gave him a hard time. And that was just, I'm surprised that even happened, because, I don't know what Vince wants. And what he wants, the pinup guy that's 6'5", 275, headlining his shows, the John Cena's of the world, and no disrespect, John's a great performer and he works really hard, but that's what he wants,
But it's funny you just said it that way too, because you said you're surprised they gave Daniel Bryan a shot, but they gave Daniel Bryan a shot, and then Daniel all of a sudden went down with that injury, and I think that was Vincent. They're saying, well, I tried to give them what they want, and then it didn't work, so I'm going to go back to pushing Roman.
Right.
Because remember, the following year, and people see, I think with Cena, there was an authentic. I'm going totally off topic, which is fine in this situation. But I think with Cena, there was an authenticity that people are like, we're going to boo him, but we respect the hell about what he's doing, because he's being himself, he's being real, he's with the kids, he's doing this, he's doing that. It's just they push him hard at times. Roman, there's nothing really authentic about him. It's a guy playing a character who they're just pushing. Yeah. And I think that to me is something that's really you would understand the system over there a little bit more than I would, but it's hard if you're a hardcore wrestling fan. It's something that just sort of just burns you out, as saying, oh well, here's Braun Strowman eliminating absolutely everybody, but then Roman's able to take him down with one Superman punch and a spear.
Yeah.
How does that? That's terrible booking.
It is, and I just don't think honestly don't think they care anymore. I honestly think that Vince McMahon has become a bigger problem than anyone cares to admit. You know, you hear people talk, and you don't know how much is real. I really don't talk to anybody there anymore, but you know, you just hear people say that he's lost his mind, that he's completely out of touch, and I'm starting to like. I really don't know how much his hands are in the writing of the show, but I know he approves everything on the show. And I just, you know, I don't know. I don't know what Hunter and Stephanie, what their role is in this too, because Hunter knows better. Hell, NXT was a great product. You know what I mean? He knew how. I mean, what's the difference between putting NXT on and Raw? You know, why should it be different? You know what I mean?
I can give you an answer, an outsider's perspective. Again, I'm 40 years old. I've been watching since I was 9, so I think I have a little bit of, you know, just an opinion. What I think hurt NXT was taking it off the WWE network. Yes, I understand you want to put it on the USA network on a bigger platform, but when you have it on the WWE network, you have a direct audience. You know, it's a wrestling fan who's going out of their way to watch that program, and you don't have to deal with the corporate sponsors because it's your network.
Right.
And also one thing that back from when you knew this, back from when you were WWE back in the day, when you tape 4 episodes in one night of a show, you're not going to see the same guys every single week. So when they are on TV, they're not as diluted and overexposed as we're used to seeing from characters.
Right. Yeah, that's a very true point, actually. That makes a lot of sense. But we'll see. That's one thing, man. I haven't watched a WWE show, and I just can't watch it, especially with the empty arenas. It's just, you know, you don't realize how much fans are important to the pro wrestling experience, both live and, you know, when you're watching it on television, because really it's hard to gauge who's over and who's not over. So now, you know, now I heard somebody say this, and I forgot who it was, but it would be a great experiment to try to get somebody over because, you know, the crowds aren't there to kind of sway them either way and just try something different. Now would be a good time to experiment with something different, and they're just going about it business as usual. So it'll be interesting to see if we have live events anytime soon too. You know, that'll be interesting.
And you just said something that was very, very important about the crowds. You performed over in Japan. Japan is starting to have fans back in the arenas now. Can you talk about the crowd difference of performing in front of an American crowd compared to a Japanese crowd?
Yeah, they're very, very quiet. They watch it with respect, and you know, they'll clap for a move or something like that, or you know, it's just not that that the way that, you know, our fans here in America are, you know, just react. There's in New Japan, I'm starting to see that change a little more with the younger kids watching today. But when I went over there, man, it was almost scary, dead silence. You could hear people like, you know, you could hear everything. You could hear somebody sneeze in the back of the room. So it was weird, but you know, at the same time, it was cool.
I'm here with Justin Incredible, former ECW and WWE star. Talk about, you know, when we get back to normal here. Talk about what your role is now. You're still in the independents and working and out there, and what's it like these days in a pro wrestling industry that's sort of been reborn with AEW and Impact sort of having a little bit more momentum now, and then towards WWE. What's it like now for a wrestler in today's society?
Well, there's a lot more opportunity out there, I think, in all aspects. You know, just the fact that there are 3, you know, and I don't even know what Ring of Honor is doing, if they're even producing television at this point. But still, you have 3 companies right now that are producing television, which is good for the guys and the gals. And what also is good with that is you need producers, you need agents, you need coaches. So it just allows, you know, because I'm not able to work at a high level at my age. I'm 47 years old. I mean, could I still go if, you know, once in a while? Sure. But the stuff I do on the independents, you can't compare to the level of wrestling in AEW. So I would like to start, you know, for me, I see transitioning to something else, a different role in wrestling, you know, and I eventually, you know, move on. You know what I mean? I got to start thinking about something outside of the business, which I have no idea what at this point. I'll always be involved in wrestling to some capacity, but I think right now there's a lot of opportunity in wrestling, and I just hope that we can get back to some kind of normal where we could start going to live events again. And I don't know how that's going to look, but hopefully sooner than later.
I have a question here from Wayne from Long Island. Definitely wanted to know. He said you were in the WWE in 1997 and during the infamous Shawn and Brett scuffle. What can you give some insight about that? I'm really not big on asking those types of questions.
Yeah,
but
I wasn't even there that night. I don't think, believe it or not. I just heard that it was a lot of hair pulling. Like they both were in the shower. There was just a lot. Like they just kind of fell to the ground and just grabbed each other's hair and a couple shots, but nothing serious. That's what I heard, but I wasn't there to see it. I don't believe I was there that night.
Okay, and one other question about that time frame from 1997, that the atmosphere in the locker room was pretty much a team, very big team of trying to band together and try to put the best foot forward for a brand at that time that was trying to redefine their footing.
Right.
Can you talk about that 1997 year while you were in WWE?
It was just the start. You could tell they were starting to move away from silly gimmicks. That they like Duke the Dumpster Droese and Mantar and all those guys to a more, serious based thing. Like, they were starting to move towards the Attitude Era slowly. It was slowly you could start to see it happen. You could start to see Steve Austin, from being the ringmaster to, turning into Stone Cold right before he won the King of the Ring there. So you could start to see the shift slowly happening around 97.
Let's do some plugs. Justin, let everybody know where they can find you on social media.
Sure, absolutely. Follow me on Twitter at PJ Polacco. Also, same on Instagram at PJ Polacco. And, of course, ProWrestlingTees.com/Just Incredible. Over 20 awesome shirts, both Aldo Montoya and Just Incredible. So check those out if you're interested.
And believe it or not, tonight also Justin's going to be joining me on the during the Deep Six podcast, breaking down the AEW show from last night. I'm sure that you have some opinions about what we saw last night. You'll be joining me, Wayne Rivera, Marito Rivera. M is one of the most knowledgeable wrestling guys I know. Not a WWE guy, but he loves New Japan. He loves everything other than WWE. So he definitely has some questions for you. So we'll be on we'll be on around 10 o'clock. So I'll ask you to hang tight for 1 second, but I'd like to thank everybody. Thank you, Justin, for coming on to this afternoon, having a great interview here for BackSportsPage.com and Off Topic. I'm Randy Zelia. We'll see you tomorrow breaking down the NFL. Oh, real quick, NFL team. Who do you got? Who's your team? Who's your team?
I like the Chiefs. I'm a bandwagon jumper. I like
the Chiefs. Yeah. Oh, you have any other love for sports? Might as well talk about it real quick.
I like the Boston Celtics. I love basketball.
You really? Okay. Yeah. I was an intern back in the day when the New Jersey Nets were the New Jersey Nets.
Oh wow!
So so I was here when the Jason Kidd era. So I was so I was around Paul Pierce and Antoine Walker during those battles. And so man, like I got to tell you. I love Paul. I've got to meet Paul and talk with Paul. When that team won the championship in '98 with Garnett and Ray Allen, I saw Paul at the Garden when I was covering the NBA, and I looked at Paul. I said, "As a player, man, I love you, but I hated what you did to my team all the time. I hated it." So he's got. We'll definitely get you. Maybe we'll try and get you into a Celtics game or two when things get back to normal.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
So we'll definitely hook you up. All right. Hold on a second, Justin. Guys, we'll see you tomorrow. Get ready for the NFL season. And this is Randy Zelia with Off Topic. All right, so that was just incredible. Back from last year around this time on Off Topic with me. He opened up a lot of conversation pieces there. I hope I nailed a majority of it down. I hope you guys enjoyed the interview. And look, Justin is very active with Vince Russo on his podcast, The Brand. Check them out. Free plug for Vince Russo and company. Follow us at the Cut Pro Wrestling Podcast on all social media platforms, as well as all podcast platforms. We are on Apple, Google, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Podcast Network. We're on all the major ones. Just click on the Linktree link that you see below here. Give us a subscribe on YouTube. Let us know that you like what we're doing with a 5-star review. Really quickly, I'd like to thank Alyssa, Scott, Jay, Austin, Jonathan, Jose, Jamie, and the rest of the crew of the Cut Pro Wrestling Podcast. We're putting together a couple big projects coming up. Look for a couple big announcements coming up on our social media platforms. Special thank you to Andrew Fumi for making us look as good as we do every single week. And for me, that's it from Randy Zelia, backsportspage.com. This has been the Cut Pro Wrestling Podcast. And guess what? That's been just incredible. Boom. See you next week on the Cut Pro Wrestling Podcast.